What's going on, Buckeye Nation? Welcome to another Columbus Wired Wednesday at the Woody. Yes, we are back. We are live. I am, of course, Andy Evans, and this guy.
True sample.
Look at this. We apologize for taking the last couple of weeks off. We were unavoidably detained, but we are here for the interview sessions that took place tonight, Drew.
Record time.
Upcoming Indiana Hoosiers, the undefeated.
Top 5.
Fifth-ranked Indiana Hoosiers, who will be invading the Horseshoe this Saturday at noon for a big noon kickoff on Fox
And
to take
day.
on the second-ranked, only one loss, Ohio State Buckeyes, and ESPN Game Day will be here too. So it's obviously a big one, and like you just said, dude, kind of record time spent with today's interview sessions. We got Ryan Day, Emeka Egbuka, Lathan Ransom, Donovan Jackson, and then able to get a little bit of Caden Curry and Quinshon Judkins off to the side. And that was it. That was all she wrote for today's interview sessions. But what did you hear did you hear anything of substance? I did. And of course, I'm sure everybody out there is probably going, wait a minute. Well, they probably already know by now, because by the time this video comes out, it's like an hour or so after these interviews take place. And so really any sort of news we have to give you is old news, because everybody just probably already got it on Twitter the moment that Ryan Day said who is going to be starting in place of the now injured Seth McLaughlin, who tore his Achilles tendon at yesterday's practice. But it will be
Carson Hinzman.
Carson Hinzman is starting at center. Austin Siereveld is starting back at left guard. And then, of course, Donovan Jackson is going to be, he's still going to be at left tackle. So you got Jackson, Siereveld, Hinzman, and then, of course, the right side, Tashabola and Fryer. So that's kind of the big news, really, out of today's interview session. Ryan Day obviously confirmed that that's what happened. That's who's starting. And really, Drew, does that have an effect on what we're going to see the product on the field come Saturday?
Apparently Seth McLaughlin's been on the McLaughlin.
I've heard it. I've heard it both.
So he's been like a coach on the field today. Everybody's fired up that he showed up, talked a lot about his leadership. We heard that. Carson Hinzman, he was a good center for us last year.
Started all 12 games.
We almost beat the national championship Michigan team.
Man.
So I think we're going to be fine as long as the rest of our offensive line stays healthy.
Great.
I think it's going to be a big game. I think Ohio State, I'm of the opinion that they're going to start to really gel as a team. I feel like they've been working out a lot of kinks, and they've been looking for the next big challenge. As everybody else knows, it's been a pretty dull couple of weeks since the Penn State game, not playing any team with a winning record. Now we're playing Indiana, who I've been big on all year with Curt Cignetti, and I think that they're still not Ohio State level, but I think Ohio State needs to take them seriously.
Yes.
But I still think OSU wins by at least 2 scores.
Okay.
So 10 to 14 points.
Okay.
I'd love to see OSU just get fired up and blow them out, but I mean, I think that Curt Cignetti's going to have his team very prepared.
I do too. I don't think that this is going to be a cakewalk for the Buckeyes, and not because we're going to see an Ohio State team that takes Indiana lightly, but that we are going to see a very, very, very good Indiana team come in here and give Ohio State absolutely all they've got. Because let's face it, this is the biggest game to date for Indiana, and is certainly going to be.
State, I'd say.
I mean, Oregon was kind of a big game.
And the Penn State game.
And Penn State, on the road, that was pretty big too.
It's their biggest home game.
Definitely, without a doubt, their biggest home game yet to this season. But I think we are going to see a very inspired, fired up Indiana. They are going to throw everything that they have at the Buckeyes.
Look for trick plays.
Yeah, trick plays. I think we're going to see just an Indiana team that we have not seen
ever.
And maybe not ever.
I mean, since we've been alive.
Not necessarily true for me.
Okay.
1988. I do remember the last time that Indiana came into the Horseshoe and won. They beat Ohio State 41-7.
Wow.
On the legs of a guy by the name of Anthony Thompson, he was okay running back for,
Who's our coach
for the
then?
Hoosiers. That would have been John Cooper's first season.
Wow.
In fact, the Purdue game, that was the last time that Ohio State had lost to Purdue at home, was John Cooper's first season. So two weekends ago, I said, hey, here's the thing about Purdue. Well, here's the thing about Indiana. The last time they won here in the Horseshoe, 1988. So both Indiana teams that they played that year in 88, Cooper's first season, they both won here in the shoe. Purdue lost 2 weekends ago. Is the same going to happen to the Hoosiers? You say by 10 to 14. You say by 14.
I'd say, I'd say 14 points. I think we win by 2 touchdowns.
Spread's what, 10 right now? 11?
I think it's been changing.
It started off at like 9.5. Then
Yeah,
I
it's
know
been
it jumped up to like, I think 13.5. However, with McLaughlin, I say McLaughlin. If you want to say McLaughlin, maybe that's the proper pronunciation. Whatever, I say McLaughlin. With Seth McLaughlin's injury, I know it came down, I believe, a point actually from 13.5 to 12.5. So, okay, are you going to say 14?
14.
Okay,
the
he says
spread is 13.5 Buckeyes. So I say they cover the spread.
See, I just heard on the radio coming over it was down to 12.5. But I guess it depends on
this is,
what app you're going through.
this is
What app are you going
Yahoo,
through?
and Yahoo uses BetMGM.
Okay. So, all right, 13.5. So you say they cover.
I say they
half a
cover.
point.
It's supposed to be 51.5 points for the over/under. I don't know about that. I just think Ohio State.
Yeah, I don't care about
I hope our defense shows up. We're going to learn a lot about our cornerbacks. Been a lot of hate for our cornerbacks this year.
Curtis Rourke and Elijah Surratt. That has been the main connection for the Hoosiers. Obviously, Curtis Rourke has been flinging the ball, very well.
And
But
the Hoosiers defense creates big plays too.
they lead the Big Ten in both sacks and tackles for loss, which I believe those two categories are like in the top 10 and 11 in the country. They have like 31 sacks and like 73 tackles for loss. And 2 of their defensive linemen are absolute beasts that Kurt Signetti brought over from James Madison. 2 of the 13 players, Drew, that he brought from James Madison, along with obviously bringing in several other guys from the portal. And just to note, he also brought 7 of his 12 assistant coaches.
And he set up the NIL program at Indiana.
And he set up the NIL
program. Doing a lot of good
He's
stuff at Indiana. Just signed a big 8-year deal.
Monster, 8-year deal.
So
and good for him.
Good for him. He was the main recruiter to get Alabama started with Nick Saban. His dad gave Nick Saban like one of his first jobs. I mean, so he's been around football his whole life. He's a good coach. The team's gonna be well prepared. They have not played in a stadium like Ohio Stadium though. It's going to be packed. Hopefully the energy is huge. It's been pretty dull all season because we've been playing,
quite frankly,
cream puffs at home.
Yeah.
Even the Big Ten teams have been like they're still Big Ten teams, but it's like they're not the cream of the crop. All of our tough games have been on the road. So I think besides the Nebraska game, who apparently that was Matt Rule, he planned all year to play Ohio State. So that was his Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So I say 14 points.
Well, my thing is, I think that Ohio State can score on this Indiana team, even though their secondary is pretty good. They've got a defensive back who's got like 4 interceptions on the year. They can play both sides of the football. But I do think that Ohio State offensively matches up well enough against Indiana's defense, and I think that our receivers, even though they have a defensive back who has 4 interceptions on the year, I think that Ohio State's receivers are better than Indiana's secondary. The key is, now that they have 2 starters, of course they've been playing now for a few games without Josh Simmons, but now that you have the whole Seth McLaughlin injury, how much is that going to affect them being able to block these 2 monster defensive linemen and creating holes for Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson? I personally think that the running game they may get stiffed a bit in the running game, because the running game
I think-
hasn't looked all that impressive even
No.
when they had Seth McLaughlin. No
It's
offense,
been-
and I
it's
know
been- it's
I
been
say that
inconsistent.
it's been inconsistent,
Yeah.
yeah, because there have been games they've run for like 170 yards, they've run for 200 yards, and you kind of look at the stat sheet and you're like, really? It didn't seem like they ripped off that much, but they did. But it just seems like this rushing game has not been as powerful and prolific as maybe at least I have expected it to be. You guys could be different, but I think that's where really, if Ohio State can assert their dominance on the offensive line somehow against this stout defensive line for Indiana, then Ohio State could win this ball game by 3 touchdowns.
I hope so.
But I don't think that's going to
Yeah,
happen.
I don't think it's going to happen.
And I think this is going to be like a 6-point game. And
All
so
right.
what's your final score?
I'm going to say it's going to be 44 to 28. Is that 2 touchdowns?
44 to 28.
I
That's
don't
like
know.
16.
16.
Yeah, that's a 16-point
That's a
win.
14-point win. That's what I got. I'm not sure.
42 to 28.
42 to 28.
42 to
There we go.
28. All right.
Jonathan Head's not good today.
Well, the one thing that you also said was Indiana's secondary, or I'm sorry, their receiving core. Curtis Rourke and Elijah Surratt, as we just mentioned, matching up against Ohio State's secondary.
Yeah.
That's going to be key too. Davison Igbinosun and Denzel Burke going to see how well they match up with Indiana's receivers. And let me tell you what, I'm a little 50-50 on it. But Jim Knowles did say yesterday that how do you prevent the back shoulder throw? Because Curtis Rourke and Elijah Surratt and his other receivers, very good at the back shoulder throw. And he said, hey, I don't mind if they get a pass interference call every now and again. And I'm sure for a guy like Davison Igbinosun, who is a very physical corner, who's had more than one pass interference call this year,
Yeah.
he's probably like, hey, hello, all right, coach just gave me the green light, let's get it on. So it's going to be interesting to see how that shakes out in that regard.
I hope our defensive backs are healthy. I think they're going to rotate guys out in and out a lot. We did hear Lathan Ransom talking about that. I think they have a statement to make, and they're either going to come out and make a statement, or it's going to look sloppy, and the Buckeye Nation are going to say, "Fire Ryan Day."
Fire Ryan Day,
Our
because
defense stinks.
he only won by 2 touchdowns,
But it's
like
gonna
Drew
be-
Sample said.
It's going to be a great game either way. Even if we blow them out, it's going to be a great game. So
I think it's going to be, I really do, yeah. And you're saying 42 to 28. We're going
Yep.
to stick with that?
Yep.
All right. I say by less than a touchdown. I'm going with something that we saw like against Nebraska. Down and dirty, gritty. Offense is going to come at a premium, even though I said, I think that the offense, Ohio State's offense can score against Indiana, or at least they can do well. I still think it's going to be somewhat of a down and dirty game. I'm going to say Ohio State 24, Indiana 20, and don't be surprised if maybe it kind of comes down to like in the late game situation where Ohio State kind of has to win this thing, because I really do feel like Indiana's going to come in here loaded for bear, but we'll see.
Awesome. Well, hey, follow us on Twitter, slash us on X. I'm at Drew Sample. Andy's Wired, and Columbus_Wired. That's it, guys. We'll see you on actually, we might not see you next week, but we will see you on Sunday.
Yes, we will
for
make
the
an
Overreaction Sunday.
An
on Columbus
Overreaction
Wired.
Sunday on the Columbus Wired podcast.
Thanks, guys.